Good morning. Hey, it is Friday, May 24th. We are getting ready to go into Memorial Day weekend, so I'm sure a ton of you guys are going to be tuning in right now, which I definitely know that is not going to be the case. But you can always reflect back on this at a later date to check it out and see how this might be relevant for you. Anyhow, what we're going to get into today, I'm calling it more of the more you know, because I think all of us remember those PSAs. I think they were on NBC of don't do drugs and things like that. I'm making this more of a financial version of the more you know. So today we're going to hit on 5 major facts that I think are relatively important. I am still going to share my 3 major social posts that I think could also have an impact on the more you know. And we're going to then close out with the social media or my weekly blog that I always like talking about. It's going to be talking about the Preakness from last week, which was a hell of a race for anybody that watched it. Now, before we get into that, the typical what is our weekly LinkedIn poll question? I actually had 2 out there. This is the more relevant one because I'm sorry, I missed a week of LinkedIn Live. But if you could increase your profit while increasing your employee benefits, would you do it? So that question is for a lot of business owners out there. But hell, if you're an employee of a corporation, would you love to be able to see an increase in your benefits while at the same time knowing your company is increasing their profits? Seems like a more sustainable way to actually be able to maintain a program like that when it's not going in the opposite directions, but going in the same direction. So please hop on my LinkedIn, vote there. Let me know what you think. Now we're going to also give you an update on the market. So as you can see, there's a lot of green and there's some red, but that red's not as bad as it could be getting. We thought that red in the 30-year mortgage could actually be coming down a bit by now. Frustrating that we haven't actually become negative yet to make it more green. But, we'll see what the later half of 2024 is for us right now. But everything else, the 3 major indices, and if you're in Bitcoin, you're definitely feeling pretty good about yourself. Now let's get into the 5 things of the more you know. And so this one is talking about the increase in sales over the last few years. And there's been, yes, there's lower inventory, which is no question about that, but there has been an increase in sales prices. And so with a lot of people, that means, oh my gosh, I have to put 20% down. And that's like a major element. But that's for the buying side, which I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But for the people that are on the selling side, well, now they're thinking about capital gains. They're just like, oh my God, like what am I going to do to minimize my capital gains rate? And so to just give you guys a little bit of ideas. So first off, from a stats standpoint, prior to this massive surge over the last 4 years in housing prices, only 3% of people that were selling their personal homes were actually having to face the capital gains tax rate because there's I think it's called a Section 121 extension or exclusion that allows for individuals to not have to pay capital gains on profits of $250,000 and lower, and for the married couples to pay gains on $500,000 and lower. But since prices have significantly increased, there's actually been 8% of sales now, so 5% increase, 8% of sales now exceed the $500,000 in profit. So there's a gift and a curse, but a way to get back under that $500,000 in profit so that you're not subject to the capital gains rate is recognizing to add the value of your home to minimize the actual profit. So if you had to do any major construction, make sure you're tracking that. Closing costs, transfer taxes, title fees, paying your real estate agents, NAR and Keller Williams lawsuit, you're still basically going to be paying 5 to 6% of your sales price. So make sure all of that stuff is added in, because if you do that, then you will be able to most likely get underneath that $500,000 in profit. Now, again, I don't know if you're really going to complain if you're just selling your property for $1 million in profit if you have to pay capital gains. But I want everybody to be able to save as much money as they possibly can. So if you are selling a home, first off, feel free to reach out to me. I can definitely coach you through that process. But second, look into ways to add all the total costs that are incurred in the transaction so that you are not getting subject to the capital gains rate. Okay, so let's go to another major fact. And so I hinted on, that was the seller's part. Now let's go to the buyer's part. The buyer's part, as these home prices are increasing, well, that means there is a higher amount of money required in that down payment, because historically speaking, we've always been told, well, you need to put 20% down in order to avoid PMI. Well, the reality is you don't need 20%. And the real fact is that, gosh, I think it's the average down payment in the first quarter of 2024 was 13 to 14%. So that really means the majority of people are not putting 20% down. And a little fact for those people, we know housing prices are all over the damn place. Like in Massachusetts, we average over $1 million sales all the time because we just like to be in a really expensive place, just like California, New York, etc. But the average median sale price or the average median down payment is $26,000. So that's pretty manageable for a lot of people around the country. But if you lack the savings, and there's 40% of Americans who cite that they can't buy a house because they lack the savings for that down payment, well, just know that there's various options out there. There's some loans like, the Department of the VA loans. It's a 0% down. That's a pretty nice feature. And then there's also, I think there's like an agricultural loan. Oh, gosh. Yeah, like federal housing loan, FHA loans are like 3.5% down. I could have sworn there's also like an agricultural loan. So if you're looking to be outside of the more urban core and even further outside the suburbs, you could even get into some loan programs like that. So just keep that in mind. You don't actually need to have 20% down if you're looking to buy a home. But again, contact your real estate agent, your lenders, your mortgage brokers, whoever it might be. Contact me. I'm happy to help any way I possibly can. All right, our third did you know fact is that adaptive reuse projects are big time. And so people that know this know I'm actually working on a pretty cool project right now. I can't fully disclose it, but that it is trying to utilize dead space that has already been built. And so as you know, there's a lot of hotels, old hotels, and office buildings that are just not really getting the tender love and care that they need to be a real operating location. But because they are physically sound, like structurally concrete, good, it could be a really good opportunity for conversion without having to create as much of an environmental impact and a faster time to actually be able to open for multifamily. And so nationwide, I think the number was about 4,500 apartments were converted from repurposed hotels. That's a major uptick. And adaptive reuse projects overall is about 18% surge last year in 2023 compared to 2022. So by those numbers, approximately, I think it's almost 13,000 new apartments entered the market in 2023 via adaptive reuse. Hotels was one of the largest ones. And I think the number is like 151,000 apartments are in various stages of conversion across the United States, with 58,000 of those being from former offices. That's a lot of stats to throw out there. I will tell you, I personally look for the rundown hotels. Those tend to be easier to convert into multifamily units on a studio basis. Think about like micro housing. Versus office buildings, you have a bigger coding change that's required, a lot more plumbing, structural engineering that's required. Versus a hotel, like you already have the toilets and all the water in there. And now you just need to do a major rehab within those four walls. So definitely be on the lookout for that if you find some real estate groups that are doing adaptive reuse. It's pretty creative. It minimizes some of the cost. It has a lot more upside, even though you will have zero cash flow on those, of course, development years. All right, let's get into another one. So the 4% rule. I've touched on this a lot. I'm not a huge fan of the 4% rule. I think there's certainly if you have a good financial advisor or financial planner that is going to give you the right education, then you're going to recognize that the 4% rule is pretty much extinct. But the fact is that although this rule was put in place in like 1994 by, his name, William Bengen, to advise people on this 4% rule, the world has changed over the last 30 years. Hell, I've gone from being a kid that was just screaming endlessly to now an adult with a kid that's screaming endlessly over the last 30 years. So although the 4% rule isn't really recommended, and to be clear, the 4% rule is talking about how much you can withdraw in retirement on a yearly basis to make sure that you have enough sustainable income to not outlive it. A lot of people, 4%, that's not like livable. So you have $1 million and you only take out 4% a year. That's $40,000 a year. Yeah, that doesn't work. Especially if that's in a like a traditional 401k or type of retirement vehicle, then you're going to also get hit with capital gains tax, traditional income tax. So you're probably going to lose your 40,000 down to 30,000 in that situation. So we really recommend people don't follow the 4% rule, but work with a financial advisor that knows how to get you more money in retirement. One of the best things, a lot of people look into is like fixed index annuities or private pension plans, things along those lines. There's a reason for it because it gives you the more certainty of you can't go below your principal amount, but you get these multipliers and that it's tied against the market, not in the market. I highly recommend it. Generally, they say you don't put anybody under the age of 30 into fixed index annuities, but hell, even about a case by case basis, people that are younger could certainly consider that with their old retirement accounts. Because I'd much rather, I don't know about you, be in something that's going to get me about a 10% year over year return with the comfort of knowing that it's not going to go down. Whereas, I think people know one of my companies that I left, there's a vesting period, and during that time, I lost 40% of my total 401k. So not a huge fan of 401ks. I'd much rather be in a fixed index annuity if possible. And that just gets me incremental income. And in fact, I think that's what my little tab here is talking about in the box next to me. If you're watching this, it shows that somebody that utilizes even like a third of their retirement income, if we're sitting at $1 million, and they put that into a fixed index annuity, now they're going from $40,000 a year that they can live off of based on that 4% rule to $53,000. And that's just using a third. So imagine if you had more of that sitting in there. Now instead of 40,000 or even 53,000, you're sitting at like 80,000. I think that's a lot more meaningful for people to live off of 80,000 versus 40,000. So just think about that. If you don't have a financial advisor, reach out to me. I can certainly connect you with the right people that I've used, because a lot of people know that me and my financial professionals know I pester them with a lot of damn questions. So I'm happy to answer any questions that might be on your mind too. All right, let's get into our main man, Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, of course, right? Well, we've been hitting on this for a while, but I just want to reemphasize it for a lot of people. Again, you can read what's on that slide, but he's really urging people that we need to address the debt here in America. This fiscal deficit needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. If not, we're just pushing this pain further down the road, which will only make it more uncomfortable. And this follows a period, of course, after extreme rate hikes, and now the rates aren't coming down. There was tax cuts. There's massive stimulus programs, $2.2 trillion put into that CARES program back during coronavirus. Like, we've done a lot of things that can create some harm to the economy, and so we really need to cut back on this, is what Dimon's suggesting. Is like, our deficit is now at 6%. That's a lot, but it does drive some growth. Any country can really borrow money, but that may not always lead to good growth. So America should be quite aware of these, how much they're borrowing. And just to give you guys some numbers here, so far the U.S. has spent $855 billion more than it has collected in 2024. So that means we have spent $855 billion more than what we have collected. That's a major debt that we have increased just in 2024. To give you perspective, in 2023, we added $1.7 trillion to the deficit. That's not very good, guys. We definitely need to find a way to solve for this. There are ways to get there. Hopefully, both the Republicans and Democrats can agree. Because if we're just pushing the debt down the road, we're going to turn into some of those other countries that are now like third world countries that couldn't pay their debts, defaulted, everything like that. We don't want that. And that's a long, long way away. But just keep that in mind. That could be one of the worst case scenario if we don't start getting it together and recognizing that we can't just keep freely spending. Okay, and did we hit all 5 stories? I think we did. So let's get right into now my 3 favorite social posts. This one I just kind of find entertaining, to be honest. And so if your boss dresses like this, you're not getting replaced by AI. We all joke about how AI can really eliminate a lot of people's jobs, and that's a fact. People need to be mindful of that, and also recognize that there's this saying that I keep liking to use, and that is, you can either make yourself obsolete or become obsolete. AI is making a lot of people obsolete. I'd rather make myself obsolete by continuing to provide value that AI can't do. But anyhow, I like to make humor at this because those pants are very, boomer style. So I think you're going to be okay if you are working for a company like that is clearly not leveraging the latest and greatest technology. Another one is, and this is just a good reminder for people, because I used to fall into this trap as well. So I'll read it for people that are maybe not be visually looking at this. Nobody will remember your salary, how busy you were, how many hours you worked, and how many Gucci bags you owned. That's true. But people will remember how you made them feel, the time you spent with them, if you kept your word, and if they could count on you. So just keep that in mind. I mean, I've always been like, oh yeah, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Yeah, shit. I need to change my own perspective. I need to focus on actually touching and improving the lives of people in my community. I need to stay accountable to what I am committing to, and I need to keep doing that for the rest of my life because I can stay accountable for 1 month. Great. I need to stay accountable for 1 year, 1 decade. Like we need to focus on the longer term here because ultimately that is what will lead to the biggest impact for my family and for my community. So it was a good wake up for me. I figured I'd share it with you. And then since I do like talking about personal finances, I thought this post was really effective. Again, these are not my own posts, so you guys can see exactly who's posting them. But this is just a good way for people to understand how to track their finances. And we break it in across income, expenses, debt, and investment. And you can see all the various things. So your income minus expenses, that equals your savings. The savings plus income equals your savings rate. That's what you want to continue to increase to maintain a good lifestyle and avoid the lifestyle creep. Total savings divided by total investments equals cash to investments ratio. You want to be able to have a good balance between the cash that you need on hand to the actual long-term growth that you're going to get off of the investments. And then the debt divided by the income equals your debt to income ratio. You must have the ability to pay off your debt. We're finding that in a lot of people, and that's where banks go upside down, is people are unable to pay back their debts. So that's why you have like 700 banks that have failed over the course of history because they're unable to collect on their debt. Because banks generally are allowed to, give off for every dollar they get in, they're allowed to give $10 away, and that's on the low side. It's generally 30, sometimes up to 100. So you need to make sure debt to income ratio is not out of whack. And then finally, to figure out your net worth, it's your total savings plus your total investments minus your total debt. So those are the major things that I thought was just like a good education for people that if you don't understand these like major formulas, talk to me. I'm happy to help. But I think this is really relevant for any person that is just trying to start planting that seed for their financial future for themselves and their family. All right, the final thing that we're going to touch on today is really the Preakness. And so you can see the image right here. That is, what is it? Seize the Gray. So I'm a horse racing fan. Used to love going to the track. I think I've been to the Derby like 4 times. Keeneland, which is another fun thing in Kentucky, been to that a lot. And I've done, of course, the Preakness and the Belmont. So I've done the Triple Crown as a fan. And so I was watching it again last week. And again, a lot of people know my name is Dan. So, of course, I was cheering for Mystic Dan because who doesn't want to see their own name win? And unfortunately, Mystic Dan was, finished in second behind Seize the Gray. Seize the Gray ran a great, fastest 2 minutes. It was awesome. But what was really something that I thought stuck out to me that I wanted to share with other people was the fact that the person riding on Seize the Gray was this newcomer, Jamie Torres. He's a 25-year-old jockey. And this was his first, major race. And he ended up winning the Preakness. And while I was watching that, I was reminded by that old saying of, you don't bet on the horse, you bet on the jockey. And most of the time that is true because Jamie Torres is relatively new. So you would be betting on other more seasoned jockeys that were in that race. And this phrase is often a metaphor in business and investing context because it means that the skill and experience and the track record of the leadership, aka the jockey in the situation, is much more important than the idea or the product, aka the horse in the situation when making a decision to invest or support a venture. So a few reasons why this is important to favor this approach. One is leadership quality. And effective leadership that can navigate challenges. We know that we live in a VUCA world, a volatile, uncertain, and chaotic environment. And so we have to be able to pivot on the fly. We have to build the plane while we fly it a lot of the times, and that's through effective leadership quality. Whereas a weak leader might just fail because their first idea didn't work. They're just like, oh God, I don't have anything else. Another thing is experience and track record. A leader with a proven history of success is likely to replicate that success. Investors and stakeholders often look at past performance as an indicator of future performance, even though we always advise against that. But experience and track record certainly shows that they've taken the punches, they understand how to manage through that chaos, and can ultimately deliver a good result. Then you've got the adaptability and decision making. Again, this is the building the plane as you fly type approach, and there's going to be changing environments. You have to make strategic decisions in the moment that you are. And good leaders are often better at managing crises and seizing opportunities. Then you got vision and execution. Again, they have to be able to see longer term and shorter term. You can't just be narrow-minded or too broad. You have to be able to have a multiple views of how to do this. And that's what the visionary leader can do. It creates a clear plan for today, tomorrow, and 10 years from now. Team building is another major element that we look for in those leadership teams, because you want to be able to create a culture where people actually want to be around. And that's all about good leaders attracting the right talent and retaining that talent to be able to run that business or that horse around that track. And then the final element, which I've kind of, it all fades into it, is investor confidence. If you have an A team with a C idea, people are going to invest behind the A team. Versus vice versa, if you have an A idea with a C team, people aren't going to invest in that. They're investing on the leadership team and their experience because they can outperform other things in the marketplace just based on their track record and understanding of this is what we need to do in order to succeed. So while that product and idea is still very, very important, don't get me wrong, the emphasis on the jockey underscores that the belief of strong leadership can overcome pretty much any obstacles out there for people. And so as I think about this, I've personally taken chances in my life, and I'm not surprised to see that a lot of the things that did succeed, it's because I invested behind a team that had good leadership. Now, sure, there's been some good deals that were done with people that were more green in nature. And there's also been some situations, rarely, of I invested behind a really strong, experienced team, and the investment failed. That's going to happen. Like, it's not a foolproof thing. But I want you to understand that if you really want to sustainably grow your income, find things that have been around for a while. Invest behind those things, because that is going to give you at least a greater confidence level that it will actually succeed. Will it be 100% all the time? 100% no. But let's just say if it could give you an 80% confidence level that your investment in something will succeed, or hell, even a 51%, so that the odds are in your favor, would you do that? And for you personally, as I'm thinking about closing this out here, is what are the factors you would consider before you decide to say yes or no? And are you looking for more of that product and service, or are you looking at who's running that product or service? Essentially, are you betting on the horse or the jockey? So that closes out kind of our blog element. And I know for a lot of people, they really just listen to this because they want to hear the dad jokes. And this is a few weeks old now because I created this for Mother's Day. And like I said, I just didn't do live last week. So my jokes for Mother's Day, because we should celebrate Mother's Day every day, right? Which month can't make a decision? Maybe. Where's my thing? Okay, there we go. And what season is it when you are on a trampoline in May? Springtime. What is May's favorite generation? Baby boomers. All right, guys. Well, hey, it's been so much fun as always. I'll try to be back next week. Who knows? I come here when I want. But hopefully some of the information I'm giving you is at least relevant, because what you don't know can hurt you. Take care.